2.
Rugby World Cup 2011 Empowering Bill, second reading.
Mr Speaker.
The Honourable Dr Wayne Mapp.
Mr Speaker, on behalf of the Minister for the Rugby World Cup, I move that the Rugby World Cup 2011 Empowering Bill be now read for a second time. I'd like to begin by thanking the members of the Government Administration Select Committee and its Chair, the Honourable David Parker, for dealing with this bill so swiftly and efficiently. They have undertaken a very thorough examination of this bill and have given careful consideration to the matters raised by submitters. I approve of the amendments proposed in the Select Committee's report in the bill and am confident the bill will help ensure that New Zealand is able to deliver an exceptional Rugby World Cup tournament next year. The bill is temporary legislation intended to enable the consent and regulatory approvals necessary for the smooth running of activities related to the Rugby World Cup and the facilities that will support that event. It will help ensure that New Zealand can meet its hospitality and hosting requirements and can take full advantage of the opportunities that hosting this event will provide. The bill establishes a Rugby World Cup authority to consider and determine applications for temporary approvals for Rugby World Cup related activities and facilities, as well as declarations of permitted activities. It will be supported by territorial authorities throughout New Zealand, which will act as the administrative secretariat to the authority. Mr Speaker, the bill includes provisions enabling the Minister for the Rugby World Cup, after receiving advice from the authority and after consulting with relevant ministers, to grant approvals in circumstances of unforeseen urgency. It enables declarations of permitted activities to be made urgently by order in Council. Finally, Mr Speaker, the bill establishes a Rugby World Cup liquor licensing regime which will ensure that the extraordinary hospitality requirements in relation to the Rugby World Cup are able to be met. Mr Speaker, the Select Committee has obviously given thorough consideration to the issues that have been raised by submitters and has recommended some practical amendments to the bill. In response to concern from territorial authorities, the Select Committee has recommended the clarification of roles and functions of territorial authorities who will be responsible for supporting the authority to be established under the bill. The revised bill also provides greater clarity on the authority's processes, particularly where the application is for a temporary activity or facility and an accompanying Rugby World Cup liquor licence. The bill now requires the involvement of the New Zealand Fire Service in considerations of applications to the authority. This will ensure that fire safety is properly taken into account in any approvals granted. As was noted by Mrs Jackie Dean, I should say, that is part and parcel of the safety considerations dealt with by the Select Committee. Mr Speaker, the committee also recommended other additions to the bill which will enhance New Zealand's ability to deliver a successful tournament. For instance, the bill provides an exemption from the usual change of use provisions in the Building Act to enable apartment buildings to be used for temporary Rugby World Cup accommodation. This will help address pressure on the availability of accommodation, especially in Auckland, during the finals and indeed semi-final stage of the tournament. It also provides that the Rugby World Cup activities and events occurring near the water will be able to be declared major maritime events under the Maritime Transport Act 1994. This will enable the police to create an exclusion zone in designated areas where venues or fan zones are located near water, such as, for instance, Queen's Wharf. The liquor licensing provisions in Part 5 of the bill were a particular focus of the submissions made to the Select Committee. The committee weighed up all of these submissions and has recommended some useful amendments to the liquor licensing provisions. These include allowing holders of current licences to apply to have their licensing hours extended to coincide with live screenings of Rugby World Cup matches, and to allowing cruise ships, the holders of club licences under the Sale of Liquor Act, and chartered clubs to apply for Rugby World Cup liquor licences. Mr Speaker, I might note there, I imagine, however, that might be rarely used since the matches would be largely held in normal hours, but what needs to be done will be done. Mr Speaker, on the other hand, the committee... Fair point made by Mr Mallard. On the other hand, the committee has been very clear in its recommendation that Rugby World Cup liquor licences granted under the bill should not extend the hours during which liquor licences can operate gambling machines. Thank you. The bill also requires that the provision of food and free drinking water is mandatory for all Rugby World Cup liquor licences. These are additional requirements not provided for under current liquor laws. The bill also gives police greater enforcement powers to control the consumption of liquor during the tournament. Mr Speaker, where the licensee has breached conditions of their licences or disorderly behaviour occurs on the premises, the authority can suspend or cancel a licence without giving notice to the licensee. Mr Speaker, I thank the Select Committee, officials, the Parliamentary Council office, all submitters and those people who had a part in crafting the bill to date. The Rugby World Cup 2011 Empowering Bill will give the mechanism to ensure that all necessary approvals for Rugby World Cup activities and facilities are considered and determined expeditiously. And can I note at this point, Mr Speaker, I was exceptionally impressed how quickly Eden Park has been prepared a whole year in front of the event. I think that is a great testament to an indication of the success of the tournament next year. Mr Speaker, the bill provides that unforeseen emergencies can be dealt with that might affect New Zealand's ability to host the tournament next year, and it is further evidence that the government, and I believe supported by Her Majesty's loyal opposition, continues to deliver its commitment in maximising the benefits and opportunities that our country's staging of the Rugby World Cup will present to our country. Mr Speaker, I commend this bill to the House.
The question is that the motion be agreed to.
Speaker.
Honourable